Well, hello there, everybody, and welcome to episode 22 of For Those About to Pod, We Salute You. On this week's episode, Matt discusses his year in rock, which is 1982, and I assure you, he needs no luck with this year. We also discuss the latest news. We've been to some more gigs, and we finish our show, as always, with our hugely popular feature.
Hugely.
Hidden Gem Time. But here he is, the man with the eye of the tiger, my co-host and co-pilot, Mr. Matt Rogers. Hi, mate. How you doing?
Hey, mate. Yes, good. Yes. Yeah. Oh, you noticed my eye of the tiger, did you? Yeah, I'm having some treatment. I've got some cream for that. I see what you did there. Eye of the tiger, 1982 and all that. Yeah, very clever.
Very clever.
You actually do some preparation, don't you? It's very good.
Well, I could have gone with Olivia Newton-John's Physical, which was the big one of the biggest singles of 1982. But I thought Eye of the Tiger was more appropriate for you.
Yeah, no, it was the second. Was it the second biggest selling single of 1982? And interesting that they're both kind of about workout songs, aren't they? In a way. Yeah. Biggest album ever. Thriller was released in 1982. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah. We're getting slightly ahead of ourselves. Yeah.
Maybe we should keep the Michael Jackson Thriller for those about to pop We Salute You podcast rather than the rock one.
The one, indeed. Yes, the other, our sister podcast.
It's part of the franchise, or part of our franchise. Yes. Anyway, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, thank you. You know that thing, the eye of the tiger? Is that a thing that, because people often say that now, don't they? It's got the eye of the tiger. And I wonder does it come from then, or was it around before then? We must look into that, because I'm wondering, was it invented by Survivor, or was it a thing pre-Survivor? And it was Rocky 2, 3?
Rocky 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Rocky 3.
Anyway, I'll take that one away and report back next time.
Good man.
No problem.
So as always, we always like to start with the news.
We do.
What have you got? What's happening?
Ozzy Osbourne, we've mentioned a few times. Now he had a tour, a pre-lockdown tour, and it's just been rescheduled for literally the fourth time. I was checking back in the old emails that you get these days. You don't actually get tickets, do you? As we discussed, you don't actually get them in the like you used to. I used to write to Hammersmith Odeon, dear Hammersmith Odeon, box office, please send me 2 tickets for Whitesnake, blah 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 date, whatever it was, and I'd insert a postal order, and they'd send me back 2 tickets. All being well. Anyway, Ozzy. So we bought these tickets for Ozzy and Priest. They're supposed to be playing in 2019. We bought the tickets in early 2018. It's now been rescheduled to 2023. It's like 5 years, 4 years. Well, 5 years after I bought them, 4 years after the original scheduled date. I think that must be some sort of record, surely. I mean, that's just incredible. 4 years. I don't know, obviously, we've had a few ups and downs. Ozzy, bless him, has had 1 or 2 health issues, and there's been this global pandemic in the way, I know that. And then, obviously, Richie Faulkner's been ill. It's up for 4 years.
I know.
And who knows when it might be rescheduled again. I mean, but I suppose it is what it is. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward more to seeing Judas Priest, than I am Ozzy, if I'm honest. But, either way, it'd be nice when the actual gig comes round once and for all.
It will be. Yeah. I did feel I haven't got tickets for Ozzy and Judas Priest.
I think they're still available. If you wanted to wait a couple of years.
There'll probably be a change of currency. You'll be buying tickets in Bitcoin or whatever, crypto coin, rather than
Aussie coin or something. Anyway, so that was quite interesting. How about you? What's caught your eye recently, Brian?
Well, you put something up on our Facebook page a few days ago about Freddie Mercury. 30 years since Freddie passed. Still, to me, the greatest frontman of all time.
Yeah.
We could debate singers, we can debate whatever, but I think
I think that's the popular view, isn't it?
It
He's
is
an amazing frontman, one of a kind.
He is.
And,
So obviously, 30 years since his passing. All I wanted to say was I watched. BBC Two have been doing the BBC have been doing a series for those who've got it and who can watch the BBC. I don't know if in other areas of the world you can get the BBC on BBC World, but there has been music nights every Saturday night. So we've had ABBA, and this weekend it's been Queen, and there was a fantastic documentary which I actually watched today, Matt, which is Freddie Mercury, the final act, and it's not actually a rehash of. There's been so many documentaries, the magic years of Queen. Queen have been well documented and well chronicled through the years, but it's a lovely documentary. It kind of talks about Freddie, the times in the UK. It talks about AIDS, but it also talks about the band and how they rallied round Freddie. And then the second part of the documentary gives a real behind the scenes of the Freddie Mercury tribute concert, which in itself was a very interesting gig in itself, where you had all of the heavy metal bands, Metallica, Extreme, Def Leppard, all playing the first half of the show, and then guest singers playing with Queen. And the insights of, Axl famously singing with Elton John and Bohemian Rhapsody. And they did 4 days of rehearsals in Bray Studios that Queen did, and Axl didn't come to any of them. And
is that right?
Yeah, he didn't go to any rehearsals. Elton John wanted to introduce himself to Axl before they actually sang. Elton walked up to Axl's dressing room, knocked on the door, and his security man said, "There's no one coming in. Axl's sleeping."
My goodness.
And you imagine Elton, what was that? What was that documentary about Elton? I know, was it Tennis and Tantrums or something? There's Elton going, "I'm Elton John." So for the behind the scenes stuff at the Freddie Mercury concert, it's an excellent insight into the kind of the final chapter of Queen at that time. So that's 30 years since his passing, but the BBC did a lovely documentary. It's called Freddie Mercury, the Final Act.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Yeah.
So no auction news this month, but we will. I'm sure we'll get some in due course. But one thing that caught my eye, quite an interesting one actually. Michael Devin left Whitesnake one day, and he was quite gracious about moving on from Whitesnake.
Yeah.
And the next day, or a couple of days later, Whitesnake introduced their new bass player, Tanya O'Callaghan. Now, I thought that was good. We were looking forward to it. They're pretty much, there's been a few new members. I mean, Whitesnake historically have had not quite a revolving door, but they've had quite a few people in. You've been in Whitesnake, haven't you? I think most people have been in Whitesnake that can play the guitar. You can play the guitar a little bit. Not very much, but you can play the guitar a little bit. Anyway, so Tanya O'Callaghan has joined Whitesnake, which is nice. She's previously worked with Dee Snider and with Steven Adler, the ex-drummer from Guns N' Roses. And I thought, well, that's quite a landmark appointment in a way, because Whitesnake, once upon a time, back in the 80s, were often criticised for their sexism. Yes. And along with plenty of others. Lots of others, whoever it might be, name them, and they were. And I think it's a really good move to have appointed Tanya as the new bass player. And it really does kind of, I suppose, reflect the time that we're in that back in the day, bands like Girls' School and Rock Goddess and so on, and Vixen and, you name it. Yeah. There was all this thing about, the female three-piece, female four-piece, et cetera, et cetera. These days, no one bats an eyelid. And it's good. I think it's good. And it's all, we've moved on. And I think that's great. And she's clearly going to be a great bass player, probably a good singer, knowing the Whitesnake, kind of ethos these days. Everyone sings, don't they? They have to, really, don't they? For reasons we won't go into. That's good. And I think that's great. a few of us were predicting maybe Neil Murray was coming back, which would have been nice.
He wasn't first. He wasn't first in my list. I think we have a mutual friend who, tongue in cheek, said Neil Murray's coming back. I would I was guessing on Jeff Pilson, who is the bass player in Foreigner, but was in Dokken as well. And I picked Jeff because Jeff's an amazing singer and an amazing bass player, and Michael Devon is a phenomenal singer. When we saw him at Whitesnake at Ramblin' Man, a lot of the backing vocals that were being led by the band, Michael was high in the mix. He's a fantastic singer. But I suppose with the mix now with Whitesnake, they have Dino Jalisic, that keyboard player, and the young singer from Croatia, who's an amazing singer. He's going to be holding down a lot of the vocals as well too. So I'm sure Tanya is an amazing singer. But I like you, I actually watched Tanya's show reel. They put a show reel out on one of the websites, and as you say, she's worked with Nuno Bettencourt. She's a great jazz bass player as well too, so she's top notch. So it'll be, yes, we welcome as David calls her, the Snakeette, our first Snakeette, bad boys and girls.
And talking of Whitesnake, by the way, our friend Eamon, Eon Music, has done a really good interview with David Coverdale, which I recommend everyone go and take a look at.
Yes.
Well, not take a look at, but have a read of.
Yep.
It's really good, really good. And you could actually, I was reading it, and good on you, Eamon, for doing that interview, because I would have gone to pieces, speaking to David Coverdale. But you could hear, reading the words, you could hear Coverdale saying them, which was nice. I won't do my David Coverdale impersonation.
We'll keep that for Christmas.
Indeed, the Christmas show.
and
the impression special.
Yeah, the impression special.
Whitesnake. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing them. I am looking forward to seeing them. They're out in this country with Foreigner and Europe. It's quite a good bill, and it's going to come up soon. It's next year sometime.
I'll be there.
Probably May, I think. May rings a bell. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to London. You're probably going to...
I'm going to Glasgow.
Arena in wherever it is, Glasgow, or whatever it's called these days. Anyway, should we move on?
So there you go. That's all the news, and there's our little bit about Whitesnake. And remember who was in Whitesnake? Sir Vivian of Campbell.
Sir Vivian.
We've not given him a shout out for ages.
Not for a while. But we love
but just on Vivian News.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Vivian News, the news segment.
Yes, Vivian Watch.
Well, I like it, Vivian Watch. You can do the jingle for that.
I'll do the Vivian Watch. So Vivian Watch.
Not Vivian's Watch.
No, not Vivian's Watch.
Vivian Watch.
Vivian Watch.
Sounds a bit stalkery, actually.
It is. Okay.
I think Vivian News is better.
Vivian News is better. So Vivian had a band. Whenever, obviously, it's well documented who Vivian has played with and various bands. But he put together a project which was called Trinity, which is a 3-piece band. It got a little bit of coverage in Kerrang at the time. 3-piece band. And Bandcamp have just actually released the album. So Trinity is out as an album. So for any Vivian Campbell collectists, you can go on to Bandcamp and you can listen to Trinity. It's now available. So I will be going on to Bandcamp and having a listen to that, because I never heard anything of that project. I don't know if it's rock blues or whatever, 3-piece. I don't even know if Vivian's singing. So in Vivian News, Trinity is now available on Bandcamp.
Very good.
And that's the news, mate, from me.
Well, it's good. One final thing. I just want to talk about new music very quickly. So there's a band called Herd, H-E-R-D, not The Herd, the old Peter Frampton, Stevie Marriott band.
Yeah.
But Herd. And they've got a song out at the moment called Remedy, which is really good song. I really like it. And I recommend people go and listen to it. Brian is writing it down to go onto the Spotify playlist. It's called Remedy by Heard.
It's a good job we're not Facebook Live.
That's true. It's true indeed. Yeah, it's good. I don't know much about them, but I like the song, so I recommend that one. That's a bit of new music for everyone.
Good. Thank you. We move into the segment, which seems to be turning into, rather than my year in rock, it's Brian gives Matt all the good years in rock, and Brian then struggles in his year in rock. So last episode...
it's quite a long title though, isn't it? Let's just call it My Year in Rock.
Okay. So...
Quite a mouthful.
Exactly. Thank you.
Big old hashtag, that one, isn't it?
Okay. Anyway, your year in rock, Matthew, is 1982.
Yes, indeed. That's true. It is 1982, and thank you for reminding me. I was 17.
Oh, man.
I said it.
Big album buying times.
Yeah. It was the last of the era of buying albums like every week. I think I might have given up the paper round at 17.
Okay.
And I was starting to get like proper jobs, before I went off to Hatfield Poly. I was only there 4 years, by the way, unlike you. In your famous 15 years, which we don't talk about enough, I don't think. Maybe one week we'll dedicate a whole episode to your time at your 15 years at university. But for now, I'm just going to talk about 1982.
Thank you.
Year. It was a good year. It was a good year, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Some good albums, some good gigs. I'll start with the gigs actually, because I went to a few landmark gigs. By this stage, I was kind of in the groove. 81, I started going to gigs. I've been to Donington 81, and now I was pretty experienced at going to gigs. And went to see Status Quo at Hammersmith Odeon, as it will always be known to me, anyway. And it was one of those. I think I told you this before, where our teacher drove us, Mr. Blundell, Mr. Ian Blundell. Nice guy, and he drove us to London to see Quo. There's a group of us, 5 of us. My friend Kelvin was there, our occasional creative consultant, or whatever he does. I don't know. Does he on tweet, doesn't he? Anyway, so Mr. Blundell took us to see Quo, and I think it was part of like 5 or 6 or whatever it was nights at Hammersmith Odeon. And those were days when bands used to literally sell out, a 4,000 seat, there were seats in those days, room, as they call it, a venue, theatre. And it's a good gig. We were quite close. Row E, I seem to remember, jumping up and down, because you can't not jump up and down for Quo.
Where was your hair?
Days. My hair, I was in row E. My hair, thank you for reminding me, Brian. My hair, from what I remember, was in row K. A lot of the time. It was between row K and row L. And so anyway, my wife hates that now. Because, these days, we're older. Some of us have got no hair. Some of us got some hair. And my wife hates that. When you go to a gig and someone, as she puts it, has flicky hair, she would have certainly not enjoyed Quo back in 82 or did anything in that era. So that's Quo. I also went to see, at the University of East Anglia, a band called Blackfoot. Now, Blackfoot were a band that I'd seen in Donington 81, and a great band. Check them out. They did some great songs. That year, they had a live album out, Highway Song Live. And the song, I'm just going to say, Highway Song. It's a bit like, it's kind of their version of Freebird, their Freebird, as it were. A great song. Diary of a Working Man is also another absolute classic that Blackfoot did. They were supported by Samson, who were, without one Bruce Dickinson, they had a guy called Nicky Moore singing from back in those days.
And what a good singer Nicky Moore is.
Oh, great singer. Great singer. Because Bruce Dickinson, of course, had gone on to other things, which we'll talk about in a minute. And I saw Diamond Head for the first time in 82 on the Borrowed Time tour. And Ipswich Gaumont, and did that thing that you did back in the day when you hung around the backstage door and out they came. It was November. It was freezing, but we still got the autographs. And I remember essentially interviewing Brian Tatler, because I was so interested in Diamond Head. Have I mentioned them before, Diamond Head, on this podcast?
I need to go back through and check my notes to see if you have. They ring a bell.
Oh, okay. I saw them for the first time at Ipswich Gaumont, which I think it's called Ipswich Regent now, but it's a good venue.
Just before you move on, I'm sorry.
Yes. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. I'll let you have a couple of words, Brian.
No. You sip your wine, David. Nowadays in modern music and the modern gig experience, as much as I am more than happy to pay for meet and greets, there was something about it back in the day whenever you hung about when you went to a gig early or you waited backstage to see if you could see your heroes or whatever. There was something really exciting about, I've got my ticket to the gig, but anything could happen. And I always went to a gig hoping to either get a plectrum, get a set list, get something for me for the gig. And I do sometimes think that you now pay for that experience with a meet and greet, which we both have done, and it's amazing. Yep. But there was something exciting about that not having to hang around outside. We both did it, and nobody does that anymore.
I don't think they do. I mean, we've moved on a little bit, and as you say, meet and greets, and also, and I'll come on to talk about a gig I went to a couple of weekends ago. People are a lot less kind of precious now, and there's a little bit less mystique around bands. Back in the day, go and see, who did I mention? Quo. I mean, they would have just disappeared off into the tour bus into the night. You wouldn't have hung out with them. They were too big then. Yeah. These days, bands are a little bit more sort of engaged by social media. Certainly, they're quite engaged. Maybe the kind of the not the Metallicas of this world. I mean, they're still good on social media, but you wouldn't necessarily catch them backstage, as it were. But certainly, I've met plenty of up and coming bands and artists because they're just happy to sort of hang out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that was the thing, wasn't it? Back in the day, did you go backstage? Did you go around the back, stage door? And you had to wait a fair while. Anyway, I'm glad I did it. And I met Brian Tatler. So that was 1981. I met Brian Tatler in 2002, and again, for the second time. Not the time, when I did my impersonation of him, but I said to him, Do you remember meeting me at the Ipswich Gaumont in 1982? And he was very gracious. He said, that was always a good gig down in Ipswich. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah, it was a good night. He was very, 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 he obviously didn't remember, bless him. So that was 82. Gigs-wise, album-wise, it was another stellar year. And I run through it fairly quickly. Some great albums. I mean, there are loads and loads more. And people are going to tell us on the Facebook page and on Twitter at FT80pod the albums we've missed out and their favourite albums of those years. Number of the Beast, of course, came out, the first album with Bruce Dickinson, which is it's still a great album. They still do lots of songs from that album. Yeah. Hallowed Be Thy Name, Run to the Hills, very much part of their set. The Prisoner, on there with the famous Patrick McGowan introduction. From the film The Prisoner, of course, or the TV show The Prisoner, of course. Check out the classic album of Number of the Beast because it's really, really interesting. Yeah, I won't talk too much on that. Living on Borrowed Time from Diamond Head. That's their first album with MCA, their first kind of major label album. Where we're checking out re-recording of Am I Evil? To Heaven from Hell is my favorite album, from my favorite song on that album. By the way, Warren said, and Call Me is on there. Now, I should mention my friend Valerie Federici. I mentioned her last time and then told her I was going to give her a shout out, and I didn't. We cut it out of the podcast. We do some editing, don't we, Brian? We have to a lot of the time because I end up. Let's say money goes in the swear jar occasionally. Hi, Valerie. And Blackout from the Scorpions. That was a good album. Had some really good songs on it. No One Like You, Can't Live Without You.
God, yeah.
Do you remember that, Brian? You were a mere slip of a lad in '82, of course, weren't you?
I do remember Number of the Beast. Scorpions at the time. I didn't get into Scorpions till Worldwide Live came out, but okay. I do remember watching the US Festival in '83 because I think Scorpions were special guests to Van Halen on the Rock Nights, and I remember seeing in the footage the Scorpions played 2 songs. They played The Zoo and No One Like You, and I was just wow. I was just like, No One Like You is just probably my favorite Scorpions track. It's fabulous.
Yeah, it's a good tune, isn't it?
Yeah.
Judas Priest brought out Screaming for Vengeance, which essentially broke them into the US, and they seem to be continually on a US tour. Really, they are. But I mean, the Hellion Electric Eye remains a great album intro. And obviously the song Screaming for Vengeance is on there. That was the one that kind of broke them in the US. Riding on the Wind is on there. And then finally, Rush brought out Signals, which was, again, part of that sort of beginning of that 80s era of more keyboard dominating. Yeah. Brian's making the mime for keyboards. Playing with both hands. Start that kind of keyboard era of Rush. And it's a good album, Signals, and I recommend people checking it out. For me, that was 82. I could go on about 82. There was some great stuff. There was The Eagle Has Landed, the Saxon live album. Led Zeppelin brought out Coda, the kind of bookend of their career with the sort of leftovers from the various sessions they had. But it's good. Another good year, I thought. No, those new album bands were kind of finding their feet a little bit, and as with everything, the cream always kind of rises to the top. And I was thinking about that in the context of the new wave of classic rock, and maybe we'll talk about that soon and see over time who rises to the top.
Yeah,
we'll come on to talk about that later. 1982, Brian. What are your memories?
My memories very quickly for 1982 was on as I'm more on the softer side of.
Oh yes,
I'm in the softer side of hard rock and heavy metal, and probably one of the behemoth. Soft rock AOR albums of the 80s was Toto 4. So Toto 4 came out in 1982. I think it won 312 Grammys.
Yeah.
For Africa alone. So Toto's album, it's still to this day, it's their benchmark. You know, Rosanna. It's just I love it as an album, and it is Toto at their best. The John Cougar Mellencamp released American Fool, which obviously, it was his commercial breakthrough. It actually was on the Billboard charts #1 for 9 weeks. So obviously it had Hurt So Good, Jack and Diane. In fact, Hurt So Good was held off the #1 spot by Eye of the Tiger.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was still a big selling single for them. Asia for our prog fans out there. Obviously, Asia was the prog supergroup that was put together by Geffen, where you had obviously John Wetton from King Crimson and Roxy Music. John Wetton had played with loads. Jeff Downes and Steve Howe had been in Yes. Yes, it sort of disbanded, imploded about 1981, 82. And then you had Carl Palmer from ELP. And you get all of those ingredients together and you go, well, this will be a prog, 75-minute album with 3 tracks on it and Roger Dean's, album covers, etc. And it's one of the most commercial albums you'll ever hear. It's got the big single Heat of the Moment. Which was so, a big hit in America, and I didn't expect that. And I remember buying the cassette of Asia's debut album, just been blown away by that. And then a little guilty pleasure for me, Matt, in 1982, I still think it's one of my favorite albums, and I love it for the fact that not a lot of people have it, is Hughes Thrall. So Hughes Thrall, which is Glenn Hughes and Pat Thrall, who put together the album Hughes Thrall. It's 8 tracks. It was recorded with Andy Johns, who'd obviously worked with Zeppelin, Free, the Rolling Stones. It's great guitar playing. Glenn's singing fantastically well. It's such a fabulous album. It just didn't get any. I think it was one of those. They put it out onto a subsidiary of like CBS or Epic Records. Didn't get any marketing, didn't get any push at all. Everybody critically acclaimed it, but no sales, and then there was no follow-up. So to me, the Hugh Thrall is one of those great albums. So I know I'll stick some stuff on the playlist. So that was 82 for me on the softer side of rock.
Very nice. Very nice. So that was a quick run through 82, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Good year.
Obviously, it was a good year. If anyone who listens to this podcast, any of the 12 people that listen to it, please let us know what you thought of 82. If you remember it, what albums you were listening to, what gigs you were going to, and we would love to hear from you, as they say. Not competition, by the way. Which reminds me, so we haven't mentioned colouring books this time. By the time this goes out, we will have had, and I can hardly contain myself, we will know the winner. There are quite a few entries, actually, so thank you for entering. We will know the winner of the little mini competition.
Our first competition.
Our first and probably last competition. To win. It's actually really good, this Iron Maiden colouring book. In fact, I've got a Motorhead one, Brian, here, and it's great. It's good quality. Don't ask me how I got it.
What? Motorhead one's going to be black and white.
That's what I thought. Not very colourful, is it? They could have picked another band. But anyway, so we will be announcing the winner of the Iron Maiden colouring book in probably the next episode.
In our end of year episode.
Yeah. Is it end of year? I don't know.
Okay.
I haven't worked it out.
Next episode.
Anyway, I can hardly contain myself. And I'm sure the people who've entered are waiting with bated breath. So that, Brian, was 1982, a Whistle Stop tour. Now, I'm going to give you an equally good year, I'm sure.
Excellent.
2015. Quite recent.
Okay.
A mere 6 years ago.
Fabulous. I look forward to the year of 2015.
Well, I'm sure you do.
And I definitely left university at that point.
Just about.
Exactly.
Yep. I remember your graduation, actually. It was a lot of fun. I think we were the oldest people there, weren't we? Apart from some of the parents.
Oh, my God.
Right, 2015 for next time.
Yeah.
So when we said this before, actually, but when we first started doing this podcast in the dim and distant past of 2020, we did plan to talk about gigs we've been to.
Yes.
And as we've said before, that's growing. We are starting to get out there now, aren't we? I think there's been a lot of kind of, panic buying. People who can get out there. And a friend of ours, John and Sue, friends of ours, they went to 6 gigs in a week recently. They're obviously making up for lost time. Bless them.
Absolutely.
Lovely John and Sue. Right. So, Brian, who have you seen recently? What gigs, what concerts have you been to?
I've been to a couple of gigs, actually. Yay. And I did a double header. I did a double header with a theme running through it, which was that great band who I'm a massive fan of, which is Marillion. So first it was on the Sunday night I went to see Fish. So Fish opened up his latest tour at the O2 Academy in Glasgow. It was a tour which specifically covered off 2 albums. His solo album from the 90s, Vigil in the Wilderness of Mirrors, and his latest album, which is Weltschmerz. And I have to say, it was very, very good. Fish was, and I think this will be a theme in all of the bands that we will see coming out for the first gigs. He was so chuffed to be on stage. Fish was just so happy. I think about the third song in, he was sweating buckets and he was kind of going, I've kind of forgotten how to do all this stuff, and you sweat and you have to. So he was in good form. He was in really good voice. I know I've seen him at Ramblin' Man, and the material really suited him. I knew one song the whole set.
Oh, really?
which was the single that came out, which was Big Wedge. So Big Wedge was the single that came out, which is the second song in the set. And after that, I knew nothing. But he was in really, really good form. And John Mitchell, who I'm a big fan of, who plays in It Bites and a number of sort of prog projects like Frost and Arena and Kino. John was playing lead guitar on it and he was sounding in great form. But the one thing that really interested me about the gig was the support band. As a support band called Doris Brendel. So Doris Brendel, and she actually was the backup singer as well too in Fish's band. So she was pulling double duties that night. So Doris, I was expecting sort of a progressive rock, sort of Jethro Tull, when you, and she sounded like Janis Joplin, a really rocky blues singer. And the set from Doris Brendel was fantastic as a support band. They got a great sound. She's got a new album out called Mass Hysteria. Again, one of these albums that's been released during lockdown, but this is the first time they've been able to promote it. They were superb, and her voice was phenomenal. So I was really pleased with the support band. So so I was fishing the Sunday, and on the Monday it was Marillion. And Marillion played the Usher Hall. Marillion were second night of the tour. The set list was, the band were in great form. Again, very pleased to be on stage. They played material from the Brave album. They played some of my personal favourites, things like Easter, and they finished off their encore with all 5 movements of The Levers, which is from their album Fear, which they released a couple of years ago, which many people say is one of the best Marillion albums ever. And then they finished the gig off with the only Fish era track, which if you're going to be in Edinburgh and you're a Marillion, you've got to finish off with Heart of Lothian. Yeah. And but I walked away with having watched Fish and Marillion, and there was nobody was playing there was no Kayleigh, there was no Lavender, you know what I mean? That clutching at straws period, Warm Wet Circles, there's nobody playing all that material. That the commercial material, which I thought was quite interesting. But those are my two. Those were 2 great gigs. Well,
Fish is. Talking of the more commercial material, obviously, he's probably played them to death as in his Marillion days and in his solo days. But recently, wasn't he doing that thing where they do a complete album? The whole of whatever it might be, Clutching at Straws or whatever. And that was probably it. It's probably a way of saying, that's it. Yeah. I'm done. It is interesting when, you go and see bands, and typically, we talked about this before, haven't we? You typically go and see a band and you want to hear the hits. I suppose at Easter, and it's clearly a huge hit for Marillion in the Steve Hogarth era, of course. But Joe Elliott put it really well, because bands quite often kind of not many, I'm sure, because these are their kind of money-making songs, but Joe Elliott put it really well. And I really like Joe Elliott. He was being interviewed by Brian Johnson, and he said, don't complain about writing these big songs. You have to play every night. If you don't want to write a hit single that sells millions of copies and makes you loads of money, that you have to play every night, don't write it. It's one of those. It's sort of a fairly simple approach. But you can appreciate it when, as you say, Marillion, they've got loads of new material. They're very prolific in terms of their albums. And then Fish, to be fair to him, he's sort of made it that his voice is more applicable to his more recent stuff. He's not got the same voice as he did in the early 80s, clearly. But rather than sort of try to hit the high notes, literally, he's written songs that are in probably a lower key. A little bit about music, I know. Not much, but a little bit.
Thanks.
And he's adapted his sort of style, let's say, to his singing capabilities. However, the other end of the spectrum, in terms of singing ability, I went to see the Dead Daisies, who were in London a few weeks ago. fronted these days by Mr. Glenn Hughes. Have you heard of him, Glenn Hughes? You know him? You mentioned him earlier, didn't you, in the context of Hughes?
Yeah,
so you know of him.
I know of him vaguely. I vaguely know of Glenn. Yeah.
Yeah. No, Brian's a big Glenn Hughes fan. Aren't you? You've met him numerous times.
I've met him a few times.
Glenn Hughes.
Yeah. And he remembers me as well fondly, I'm sure.
Well, he did until he took out the injunction, of course. The restraining order. So was it? He can't go within 5 miles of him. Is that right?
Something like that. Yeah.
He was on with the Dead Daisies, and he's incredible. Really, 70 years old. He's got the teeth of a 10-year-old, and he's just got immaculate teeth. Maybe not a 10-year-old, but his teeth are amazing. As everyone knows, they're kind of like a beacon, shining in the darkness. His voice, just incredible. And as we said, he looks great. He must be regularly at the Fountain of Youth in his ranch in
California,
Angeles.
yeah.
Indeed. I went with my friend Will and his 10-year-old daughter, Lola.
And did Lola enjoy that?
He had a great time.
Brilliant.
So the choir boys were on first, and Will's quite a tall fella. He's about 6, I don't know what you are, Will, 6'3", 6'4", quite tall.
Everybody's tall compared to me.
That's true. But he's very tall.
Okay.
And but Lola, because she's obviously 10 years old, she kind of wheedled her way to the front, and people were sort of looking out for her, looking after her, and giving her a nice vantage point. So hopefully, and I know she did enjoy the gig. Choir boys were great. They played. They're always good. Mm-hmm. If people haven't seen the choir boys, you always get a good quality performance. Spike is, depending on where he is in his alcohol consumption, is either on it or very on it, if you know what I mean. But they never let you down. They're a good band. And they did their hits earlier, Hey You, and There She Goes Again, and of course, 7 O'Clock, which is a great kind of party tune.
Yeah, they are a great band.
It's very early to start a party, I think, 7 o'clock, isn't it? But they seem to suggest it's a good idea, and why not? So they were good. And as I say, Dead Daisies playing stuff off the new album. I also went back to play Mexico, which is a John Corabi era song.
Really? Oh, great. That's a great song.
Absolutely.
Great song.
And Lock and Load, which was on the first album.
Yeah. John
when
Stevens.
Slash was playing on it, exactly. As we know, they changed their lineups quite regularly over the years. But a good band now. Tommy Clefitas on drums, your man Doug on the guitar.
My mate.
And I forgot his surname. What's his surname? Doug
Aldrich,
of course. And of course, David Lowy and Glenn Hughes on bass. Good night, great band. Did a couple of covers, did Mistreated, the old Deep Purple song, and Burn, as well as a few other covers, actually. So that was good. And then a couple of weekends ago, I went to Planet Rockstock, which is a 3-day event. Nothing to do with horses. But it was a 3-night event. And some real highlights from that weekend. The Mighty Diamond Head were on the bill. I'll come to them in a minute. But it was one of those festivals where you get to mingle with some of the acts, which is really good. Collateral were on the bill. They're a good new band. One of the upcoming new wave of classic rock acts. Bumped into their bass guitarist. He'd had a couple of drinks, but he was nice to have a chat with him. When Rivers Meet, who are
they're really good.
Yeah,
I like them.
Kind of new bands coming forward. Husband and wife group, and they've got some good music. Gun were on the bill, and they're always very trustworthy. Gun, with hits, Better Days, and the Word Up cover they do, and so on. My new favourite band of the moment, though, were probably, along with The Darkness, who headlined the Saturday night, were my band of the weekend, and that is Massive Wagons.
Yeah.
I said that very deliberately because I want people to go out and listen to their new album, House of Noise, and they are so good. They don't take themselves too seriously, but they are very good musicians. They got a complete lunatic singer in Baz Mills, but he's great. I mean, he's just such good value, and the songs are great. They played a mixture of the older songs. Ratio was in there, Pressure was in there, Back to the Stack, which is their tribute to Rick Parfitt. Yeah. They were great. Also notable mentions, one of my other favourite new up-and-coming bands, Eden Thorn, were on the bill. I had a nice chat with the bass player, Faber Gabrielle. She was lovely, very, very pleasant to chat to. Good new band. Check them out, Eden Thorn. I've mentioned them a few times on the podcast. Sadly, Blaze Bayley didn't make it. COVID, unfortunately, played. I was looking forward to seeing him, actually, and they were replaced by Stone Broken. Another good young band, up and coming, coming on to their third album, which is coming out early next year. But they always put on a good show. And as I said earlier, Darkness were the headliner of the Saturday night. And again, they're one of these acts that I mentioned before. You sort of enjoy the songs, but also you enjoy Justin Hawkins' sort of banter and his jokes between songs. So they're on tour in the UK at the moment. If they're still playing when this podcast comes out, try and get yourself a ticket. I'm going to see them again in Leeds in a couple of weeks with Massive Wagons. Other notable mentions: Chris Barris Band, really good, great guitarist. Yeah. Those Damn Crows headlining the Sunday night were their usual reliable selves. Again, check them out. Really had a meteoric rise in the last few years from seeing them in way down the bill. First on the bill at Rambling Man in 2018. Brian.
Were they really that far? Gosh.
They weren't even on the main stage. They were in that funny little tent. Do you remember that rising stage?
Yeah, the rising stage tent. Yeah.
That was when that guy was there with the other King's X fans there.
The other King's X fan in the UK.
That's right. Well, apart from Brian, our friend Brian Heaston, of course, but the other King's X fan was there, and I tried to get you to make friends with him, but you weren't interested. The Mighty Diamond Head were on the bill. Put on a good show. Did a few of the old hits. Did Am I Evil, of course, the ubiquitous sort of show closer. Mike Gray. I'm rattling through these because they're all worthy of mention. Mike Gray was probably the revelation of the weekend for me. I'd seen him with Skin. I'd seen him with Red, White and Blues. Singing, he had Dan Byrne, who was in a band called Revival Black. And I bumped into Dan the night before. I'd met him a couple of times. In fact, I met him when we were chatting to him when we saw Revival Black in London a few weeks ago. And I said, Dan, are you singing with Mike Gray tomorrow? And he said, yeah, I'm absolutely bleeping myself. And he told me he was going to write down some of the lyrics and sellotape them to the stage and everything. But he did a really good job. He was fantastic.
Yeah.
And Mike Gray was phenomenal, fantastic. And probably the best sound of the entire weekend. And he's a real shredder. But they kicked off the gig with Stand Up for Rock and Roll, which is a Red, White and Blue song. That's a classic.
Yeah.
That's a great introductory tune. So all in all, it's a great weekend. Saw a few new bands. Notable mentions to Haxon, three-piece from Wales. They were good. I had a chat with them afterwards.
Yeah.
Attic Theory were great. Ashen Reach were good. Some really good up-and-coming bands. Really, really good weekend all round. Had a great fun. Came second in the rock quiz. You can't win them all. You can't win them all, Brian. Can you? We should have had you there with your extra special powers about prog rock and everything. It wasn't to be. So that was Planet Rockstop. It was good. It was one of those holiday camp gigs, but down by the seaside. So it was nice.
Rock in Butlins.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. No, it works well. It was good. Really enjoyed it. Coming out of Planet Rockstock is there's a lot of new bands coming through, as we mentioned. There's new wave of classic rock, sort of movement, for want of a better word. And there's so many, the future of rock is in really good hands. Yeah. However, it does need people to go and see them because they don't sell that many records these days. The days of, the 70s and 80s when new bands came through, they sold a bucket load of records. They went on a support tour to the US, and then they came back and then they did their own sort of headlining tour and so on. Those days are gone, at least on the whole. And if you see the likes of Haxon or Attic Theory or Revival Black or Collateral or whoever out there, you're not going to pay very much money to see them, but you have a great night. And the bands, this is their livelihood in a lot of cases, and I think you can get really good value for money paying £35-40 or whatever to see the Darkness, but equally you can pay £15 to see these up and coming bands, and they really appreciate it. So that's my little kind of soapbox moment, Brian.
And do you know what's really interesting, and that point you make, and I completely agree with you, is it was really interesting, the support band to Fish, the Doris Brendel band.
Yeah.
Whenever they were coming to their last song, and she basically, and they got a really good reception, she turned around and she said, "Hey, really sorry we can't come and hang with you at the merch stand because of, strict COVID restrictions, etc." But she actually made a really honest comment and said, "Hey, we're not getting paid anything to come on tour with Fish. The only way we can make money is if you come to the merch stand and buy our t-shirts and buy our CDs, etc." And I just thought, there's a great band on a support, and I think I actually now, having seen seen the band play on a support tour, if they come back round again and play in Scotland, it would be nice to go and support that band. So if they are paying £10, £15 a ticket, that's going to go into the coffers of the Doris Brendel band, and they'll make some money out of it. So it was not lost in me. And you don't hear many support bands kind of going, "Hey, we're really enjoying being on the tour, but if you don't buy the merch and if you don't buy the CDs, we're not going to be able to have dinner tomorrow." And it was just a little reminder to say, you got to get out there, you got to support live music, because that's the only way that bands can really survive these days, is playing live.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've got all serious, haven't we, Brian?
Sorry.
So worth saying all the same, because there's some massive talent out there, and let's hope everyone sticks around and they all have very successful futures. And because I, for one, will be checking them out when they come round. And that's the beauty. We said this before. That's the beauty of these festivals. They come a long way to do the gigs, or they go on as a support, and they make some new fans, and it becomes a kind of snowball effect. The fans will go and see them when they do the headline tour, as you said, or headline gigs. So support those up and coming bands, the future headliners,
good,
and so on. Yeah. Okay, so that was gigs.
Yep,
our latest gig outings.
That's the show done, isn't it? Now. Oh, we're all done. The show's all done.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it? Oh, okay. I'm sure we haven't forgotten one final thing. The most important part of the whole thing.
Oh, go on then.
Whole podcast.
Go on.
So,
you're already. To be fair, you're already angling your spin-off show. Hey, everybody! Welcome to Matt's Hidden Gem Time.
Well, I've got news for you, Brian. Along with our sister podcast, for those about to pop, Hidden Gem Time, the podcast, is roaring up the podcast charts as we speak.
I thought you were going to say Hidden Gem Time, the movie.
Do you remember we talked about that, didn't we? Who would play us in the film of the podcast? I think you landed on Liam Neeson, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I can't remember who I picked for you, but you were most dischuffed.
I was devastated. I think it was Bill Nighy or something like that, wasn't it? I had a young Harrison Ford in mind, and you went with someone like
Phil Daniels.
I love Phil Daniels.
I know. Right.
I'm not a I'm not. You make me out to be some sort of Cockney cowboy. I'm from Norfolk.
But I can't do a Norfolk. I can either do. Sorry. You have in our contract between us, you've got the exclusivity on doing impressions in on our podcast, so I can't start doing impressions.
That's true. That was clause number one, wasn't it?
It was clause number one.
I remember. Yeah, I remember that one.
Don't be funny and don't do impressions, Brian.
No impressions. And no, you do. No, it's fine. You can do them if you like, Brian.
Okay.
Anyway, where do we get to? So, hidden gem time. Boom. Hidden gem time. Everyone's favourite part of the show. All 12 listeners tell me they love this part. Hopefully 13 if your mate, what's his name?
Dougie.
If your mate
Dougie.
tunes in, if Dougie tunes in, is it Dougie or Dougie?
Dougie.
It's Dougie. Okay.
But if you're Michael Schenker,
anyway,
if you're Michael Schenker, you go Dougie.
That's
Dougie.
why I asked. That's why
Hello,
I asked.
Dougie Veit.
Yeah.
Dougie Veit here on vocals.
Oh, indeed. That's why I asked, because you never know, do you? Right, what you got for us, Brian?
So, my hidden gem. I'm going to. This is me being cheeky, but we talked about 1982. We did, didn't we? Earlier in the show.
I remember. Yeah, I do remember it. Yeah, vaguely.
Yeah, vaguely remember it. I know we're both getting on now. It's like we probably don't remember if this is episode 22 or 42. So I'm going
22. It's the same number of years that you were at university.
Exactly. So
plus 7.
So I am going to go for an album from 1982, which was a self-titled debut album by the Canadian musician.
Yes.
It's not Celine Dion. Don't worry.
Oh, it's Bryan Adams.
It's not Bryan Adams.
Oh.
Bryan Adams' first debut album was like something like 1979.
Was it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Oh, anyway, enough suspense. Band, an artist called Aldo Nova. You're nodding your head.
No, I remember Aldo Nova. Yes, indeed.
Aldo Nova, his debut album, it actually went number 8 in the Billboard 200 in the US, and there was the big single off the album was called Fantasy, and it went into the do you remember, was it Casey Kasem and the American Reach for the Stars? The Hot 100, the American. Yeah, so Fantasy was the big single off it. Aldo did all of the, he played pretty much all the material. It's hard rock, bit glam, but as a debut album, absolutely phenomenal album. It doesn't date very well, I have to say. It's quite early 80s. In fact, for the 35th anniversary of the debut album, Aldo actually went back in and re-recorded a lot of the tracks to give it more. But the album I'm putting forward is released on April Fool's Day, 1982. Really? Is Aldo Nova's debut album. That's mine. Very
good. I do remember him from that era. I can picture him. Dark hair, probably red leather jacket. We'll put a picture of him on
Facebook. Yes.
To remind everyone what he looked like. I do remember Aldo Nova. I'm not sure that was his real name, but all right. Thank you.
Yeah. What you got?
I'm gonna do the same actually, and I'm gonna please a couple of friends of mine because they're gonna like this selection. So I'm gonna go back to 1982 as well, and a band I don't think we've mentioned actually, Brian. 38 Special released an album called Special Forces. Now, if I'm honest, 38 Special kind of passed me by until fairly recently when my friends Cohen and Richard reintroduced me, let's say, to the album. And I'm just saying it's a very good album. 38 Special, not a band we've spoken about, as I said.
Yeah.
A lot of people remember the single Caught Up in You, which came out at the time. But there's some really good songs of that album. Chain Lightning, Firestarter, not the, of course, the famous one by the what are they called?
Prodigy.
The Prodigy.
Leave it to me for the modern tunes for the kids.
The kids. I wonder how the kids are doing. If they're listening, hello, the kids. Anyway,
that's a new demographic for us. We need to get the kids.
Well, we do. We do need the kids to listen. If anyone's got any kids, and hello again, Georgia, Olivia, Sam, etc. But no, the reason I mentioned it is we mentioned Survivor right at the beginning of the podcast, and this is not just thrown together. Well, it is mainly. I just thought this on the spot, and it just so happens that Jim Peterick, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, Jim Peterick actually wrote or co-wrote Caught Up in You. Now, Jim Peterick, for those that don't know, of course, Brian was...
He was the keyboard player and guitarist in Survivor.
There you go, as in Eye of the Tiger.
There you go.
So we've sort of come full circle, in a way. But check it out. Special Forces by 38 Special is my hidden gem this week. That doesn't really work, but you get the general idea.
We get the general idea.
So that was it.
Episode 22.
Brian. Done. Dusted. Back of the net.
Exactly.
In the onion bag.
No need for
done.
VAR.
None at all. Maybe a few edits, but we will keep them to ourselves.
Exactly.
As to what swear words you had to cut out.
Okay.
And of course, as we always say, thank you all for listening. We do appreciate it. We have got 1 or 2 more than 12 listeners. We joke about it. And we got people contact us all the time, literally, and saying how much they enjoy it, which we love. Randomly, we get the odd message, the odd text, people doing my jokes in your presence at your many years at university. So we love it. Thank you all for listening.
Yes, absolutely. Check us all out. Where, as we've said earlier, we're on. You'll get us on Twitter, FTAT Pod. We're
remembered.
on. Sorry, what's that?
Well remembered.
Exactly. You'll get us on Facebook as well too, and we will see you all next time. And remember, we will be having our first winner for our first competition.
How exciting!
Exactly. In
Christmas special. Is that Christmas special next time?
It's our Christmas special next time.
Oh wow! I might dress up as Father Christmas, Santa. I think I will actually, and do several of my impersonations to celebrate.
Excellent.
All right, thanks, Brian. See you, mate.
Until next time. For Those About to Pod, We Salute You is a Mealy Rogers media production. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.